It's like music when you think about it. Like high contrast is like punk rock, and low contrast is like Elliott Smith or like, sad
Pretentious.
acoustic.
Hi, Samuel here. Welcome back to another Monochrome Report. This is my June report. I'm filming this in July already because I need to give a little disclaimer. This report is not going to be as thorough or in depth as my previous reports. And the reason for that is that the moment I finished filming for the last report, my daughter or our daughter was born. So you can imagine how much attention that took off me, how much time I also wanted to spend, obviously, with my family. So I did not have a lot of time to go out intentionally to take photos in the low contrast monochrome aesthetic, which I still wanted to continue. And I have a bunch of family photos, obviously. And yeah, the birth, by the way, was super smooth, no complications. She is healthy and fine. She sleeps a lot and drinks and sleeps. Not much action going on, but my son is very emotional, and I'm sure I have some parents watching who know exactly what I'm talking about. It is not easy, but everything is fine. Anyways, you're not here for that, you're here for photography. And I'm still going to talk about monochrome photography because I came up with a last minute idea to rescue this episode, this report, to make it more interesting for you. I invited a photographer to talk with me about monochrome photography, in particular low contrast, soft contrast monochrome photography, and also talk a lot about Mark Steinmetz. His name is James Reed. He's a friend of mine who lives in Frankfurt. He's an American but lives in Germany. And we also did a video on this channel before, and also on my German channel. So if you want to check that out, I will link it up somewhere in the description. But he's very knowledgeable when it comes to photography, and we went on this whole journey trying to understand the appeal of low contrast photography a bit more, monochrome photography, and also dive deep into Mark Steinmetz. And we also talk about his photography, because recently he started to do a lot of street portraiture, and I got very inspired by his portraits, to be honest, and it made me want to do the same, which I wanted to do for this episode, but I'm probably going to do it for the next episode. This also means that I did not film any vlogs, but just 2 days ago I had a very cool shoot. So for the July report, you will see a lot of action and vlogs again. So here's my conversation with James Reed. The wind is coming, storm is coming, let's start. And I see you at the end to look at some photos of mine that I took in June as well. Enjoy.
I think I used to be more into low contrast, black and white, or it was kind of a goal of mine. I'm not even sure it was a goal. It was more like I had a goal to be like this photographer, Mark Steinmetz, who I like a lot. I think at the time I was shooting digital, and what I would do is I would open his website and have some of his photographs open when I was doing my like raw file adjustments when I was importing. And I would try to match the look of his photos. And I noticed there was such little contrast in them. Like I was pulling the whites all the way down, basically, I remember. I think that was the first time that I started to think about contrast, and specifically the question of like, why do I like this guy's pictures so much? Is it because they are so low contrast, and what is it about that look that I like a lot? So I think at the time I was shooting, like I said, digital, and I was going for that look specifically, but I didn't have it in my head like the words low contrast. I just was trying to make my pictures look like his. And then when I started shooting film, it was a bit easier, I noticed, and especially if you shoot middle format or large format film, which is what Mark Steinmetz also does. He shoots, I think 6x9 on 120 film. It's easier because you just have so much more latitude, as the negative gets bigger, you've got like the possibilities to have a lot of different shades of gray. And it was kind of like a whole process, but I think I've sort of come full circle now, because when I'm developing at home, it's called High Contrast Developer, actually. It's called HC110, and I just like the look of it, but I sort of pull my film so that it's not quite as extreme. But yeah, that's been my contrast journey. I like to have details in the blacks, and I also don't like whites to be too strong as well. I really just want to get it balanced, and I think there's a type of contrast that reminds me of Diane Arbus or Vivian Maier, where it feels realistic. I think that's the thing about contrast, is when I'm looking at my screen and I'm making adjustments, I feel like there's a point where the contrast starts to look real, or it starts to look maybe interesting is a better word. And then I feel like I nailed it. Like if it's too flat, it's kind of like the Pinterest aesthetic of underdeveloped film,
Mm. I like how
And if it's
you talk about realism, or how that something feels real to you.
yeah.
So would you say if the edit or the way you develop the film has a too aggressive contrast, then it starts to take away from the
Yeah.
moment you capture, or the scene, and then becomes more
Yeah, it just starts to feel
art, let's say?
stylized.
Mm.
Feels like Japanese photography
Mm.
from the 60s where it's just kind of it's more about let's be grungy, let's be wild, let's be chaotic, and
Mhm.
less about I was here and this is what I saw. I think it's hard to answer the
Mm.
question. I feel like I can just talk about how I think of photography in general, and also like the
Mhm.
question between whether to shoot in black and white or whether to shoot in color.
Mm.
For me, I think color is like a painting, actually, specifically like pointillism or Van Gogh. That's how we say it in America. Over here, you all say Van Gogh,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, where it's kind of cooler to have it not look like reality. I guess another painter like that I would think of would be like Bruegel, where it's about a big scene. It's not about one recognizable moment. It's more about sort of a tableau
Mhm. Yeah.
of of different things happening, or just something pictorial. Like maybe there's not a lot happening, but I don't know. Some goofy thing comes to mind, like a somebody on a horse in a landscape and they're backlit. It's pictorial. It's like it's a feeling. It's a vibe.
Yeah.
Um, and black and white, I think more about. I don't even know the English word, but in German they call it relief, where you've got a
Mm.
piece of stone and you chisel into the stone and you make kind of a not totally three-dimensional sculpture, but it's like it is a sculpture still. Because there I feel like it's more about the moment and what's happening, and also light plays a big role because you can hang one of these stone sculptures up on the wall, but the lighting you put on it is really going to affect how people see it.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's how it is with black and white photography. Is like you
Mm.
can play with the contrast and change people's perception, but the content is still the same. That's why I think it's similar to relief. And also like it is exactly that, a negative, at least if you shoot on film, a negative is
Oh
um,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
little
You're
grains
right.
that are actually some of them are sticking up higher than others,
Mm.
on the negative. So
And I love when a black and white photo is printed where you can feel the ink, and then
yeah,
where there's white, you don't feel the ink anymore.
yeah.
So that's also kind of like it.
Yeah, so I think of contrast as just how you're lighting your sculpture, basically.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
in
makes
terms of
sense. Makes sense.
in terms of subject, like it's very different. I would take pictures of thing on black and white, or I would take pictures of people maybe on black and
Mm.
white film, and I would never take the same photo on color. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I always say that I never regretted having a photo in black and white or monochrome, but I would sometimes convert color photos into
mm,
monochrome.
yeah,
When I convert a color photo into monochrome, then it's because the color distracts from what I wanted to show,
mm,
or specific moment or part of the frame. But when I'm intentionally taking photos in monochrome, there's never the case where I'm like, oh, this looks better in color, let's switch it. Oh yeah, it's
yeah,
much better now. Because I would
yeah,
have noticed the color while I was taking the photo, and then I would
yeah.
have made a decision to use it.
I have it on the street a lot too, where I see somebody wearing some like bright neon colors, and when I have black and white film in the camera, I'm just like, whatever, okay, great, let's go.
Yeah, yeah. Can't do anything
Whereas in
about it.
color, I would make up an excuse to not take the photo.
Mm. When we
Yeah.
talk about Mark Steinmetz, I find his work is very, I don't know if sensual is the word for it. There is a
Mhm.
layer of calmness over his photographs. It's
Yeah.
not in your face. It doesn't try to stop you. Again, when you
Yeah.
walk past a print of his, you're not like, oh, what is this? You're like,
Right.
oh, let me look at this. It's like very relaxing experiencing
Yeah.
his photography. And I feel like the low contrast aesthetic helps add that calmness to his work.
Mhm.
Maybe.
I think you're right. I never thought
Yeah.
about it, but I think that's true. It reminds me of like I remember one of the first times I was printing black and white negatives onto paper, and
Mm.
I thought they looked great. I was so happy with them, and then I went to show my teacher, and she said they're a bit dark, no? And I
Yeah.
and I realized, oh, I'm so sensitive as a person that
Mm.
to me, what looks correct to like the average person is like a little too low contrast probably and too dark, you know. And I notice this
Yeah.
a lot too because I work in video. I know you worked in video as well. When you see people color grading for the first time, they tend to be a little on the dark side, depending on their personality, I would say, you know.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think there's something about that. Like if you're sensitive, looking at yeah, like some of those Japanese zines from the 60s must just feel
Mm.
abrasive, you know, it's like slapping you in the face.
Yeah.
And if you are somebody who is looking for a calm little like respite zone, Mark Steinmetz is a great place to look because
Mm.
you're absolutely right. His pictures are, they really invite you to get closer, and there's sort of nothing to be afraid of when you're looking at them. There's nothing to push you away. And I think that has to do a lot. You're right with the contrast levels, actually. Yeah.
Mm. It's kind of interesting to think about personality types that resonate with low contrast more because
Mhm.
high contrast is too loud, and maybe we are more the sensitive type. Because I never really could identify with the harsh contrast of the Provoke era or Daido Moriyama and everyone who
Yeah.
came after him. I tried it last month or previously, and I got used to the high contrast look. I
Yeah.
got desensitized, let's say, to it. It wasn't that aggressive to me anymore. And I had fun using high contrast black and white. But the moment I switched back to low contrast monochrome photography,
Mm.
I immediately felt like, oh, I'm back home. Oh, this is much better. Like a warm
Yeah.
bathtub, like you're taking a warm bath. And it's like, oh,
I
yeah,
think
this is better.
it's like music when you think about it. Like high contrast is like punk rock, and low contrast is like Elliott
Mm,
Smith or like, you know, sad
pretentious.
acoustic.
Yeah. You
And
know, maybe,
they're on
okay.
the same spectrum, actually. You know, like punk music and like quiet folk music,
Mm,
but it's different. You know, it depends on your mood and your personality. I don't know. I think what you said is right. There's something in his photographs that feels like ecstatic truth. That thing that Werner Herzog talks about. It's something you've never seen before, but it still feels universal. Feels like you could have seen it that same morning or evening walking around your city. You know, there's a lot of little
mm,
moments when you go around where reality is sort of like a curtain that opens up and you're looking into some David Lynch kind of other world behind our world, you know. And I think a lot of his photos are like that. One of my favorites is there's like a young kid sitting on the side of the road blowing up this balloon. Yeah, it's just such a random detail. I've never seen that. I've never seen a kid sitting on the side of the road blowing up a balloon before, but it feels like something that
that
could
you
have
might
happened
have
in my
seen, yeah.
childhood or that I could have seen, you know. And I love that about his work.
Now I feel very motivated to look for these moments that are so small, but if you catch them, then they resonate with a lot of
Mm,
people, and that's super hard. And
it is.
because the photographs from Mark Steinmetz, they look very simple. If a photographer looks at the work, it's like, I could have taken this photo. Yeah, you could have, but it's not only about how he took the photo, right?
Mm,
For example, his summer camp series.
mm,
I never really went to a summer camp, maybe one time in my childhood, but in Germany, so at the
yeah.
Ostsee. So I have a little bit of memory of going to a summer camp. But his series made me feel like nostalgic about it, about something
Yeah.
I never went to. Like, but I
I
could
know.
feel like I lived the American childhood of that time
Yeah.
because of his photos.
I
Because it
know.
looks like he took photos of a point of view of another kid that experienced this, who
Mm,
just happened to be a very good photographer,
yeah.
right? So that I find very interesting.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. I think there's great value to both, to photographing those really strange moments and also the subtle ones that are kind of go unnoticed. hard thing is that you seem much crazier. Like you really seem psychotic if you go up to somebody who's blowing a balloon on the side of the road and take their photo. That's so much crazier than somebody with a chimpanzee. Because everybody who sees you photographing someone with a chimpanzee is like, oh yeah, of course. Like it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
But if it's like a grandmother putting on their lipstick at a subway stop, you are the weirdest human that has ever walked by. Like
Oh,
so I think it takes a lot of courage more than
that's
anything
true. Yeah.
else, and also concentration. Like I know Mark Steinmetz is a big meditation guy, and he
Mm.
sees photo making as meditation and tries to clear his mind of everything when he goes out, etc. So I think you have to have that combination of being just very brave and very focused at the same time if you want to get it. The thing you're talking about with like with freshness as well is I think it's important to remember that he took a lot of the photos that are being published now in the 80s. So it's been 40 years
Mm.
since he took the photographs. And I think it's just my imagination here, but I think that helped him a lot to take time away from the pictures and look at them much, much later and be able to
Mm.
like freshly see what's good and what's interesting, you know? And also, there's just something about like time traveling. I think that's why Vivian Meyer was so successful because her pictures came out like 50, 60, 70 years after she took them. And we all love to time travel, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think low contrast actually really helps with time traveling because
Mm.
there's nothing standing in between you and that moment.
Right.
There's
Right.
no style or,
It's a bit more immersive than
yeah, there's no
living at high
indication
contrast.
of like something's between you and that moment. You're just there in the
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think the two things that tend to indicate to us a specific period of time are grain and contrast, actually. Maybe saturation as well. But that's why, like, you see something and you think, oh, that was from the 70s. It's all because
Mm.
of that type of grain and that type of contrast that was like in
Mm.
vogue back then. And so, like, Mark Steinmetz, Vivian Meyer, they're shooting medium format, not a lot of grain, and they're also not throwing tons of contrast in. And I think it really does help to make the stuff look timeless,
Mm.
actually. Yeah. We tend to look for reasons and we tend to make up stories, but in reality, a lot of choices are made because that's the easy choice for
Mm.
the person or the artist and the place where they live. And I think in the US, compared to Japan in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was much more access to different printing methods. Also in Europe, you know, you have like Steidl starting to make books and other people, and they are taking the art of printing books more seriously, and they want to be able to reproduce what you can get in like an analog photographic print in a
Mm.
book form.
And what about the midtones?
Fuck the midtones.
And, you know, Gerhard Steidl, he spent like forever trying to figure out how to use multiple types of grays while printing, like actual gray inks, to be able to make these black and white photo books. So I think just people in the US and people in Europe having access to that made them feel comfortable enough to follow that if that's what they wanted to do. I don't know that I would call like Lee Friedlander a low contrast photographer, but like compared to
Yeah.
Japanese photographers, definitely. I think more about Robert Adams, who's had a really long relationship with Steidl and people like that, and now Mark Steinmetz, but he's also with Nazreli Press. I think most of his books. But the whole thing there is it's all about luxury and it's about kind of like limited edition books and the finest
Mm.
quality possible, which is just it's a different mindset. And I think
Yeah.
in Japan in the 60s and 70s and 80s, I mean, I wasn't there. I'm not an expert or anything, but I imagine that these are young photographers who they have their negatives and they have like a copy machine to use to make
Mm.
books, you know.
Yeah.
That's like a super different reality to wake up in. And they found like
Mm.
probably the regular printing process didn't look great, but if they pushed it really hard on the contrast, they got something interesting, you know.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that was what was available to them at the time. I think it was a lot about resources and economics, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can
Yeah.
print a high contrast photo on t-shirts and it doesn't
Yeah.
look weird. But if you print like a very high dynamic range, low contrast monochrome photograph on a t-shirt, it's much harder, or it's way more
Yeah.
difficult to get the contrast right.
Yeah.
And
I think it's what people
yeah,
forget as well, is that photography used to, for the majority of
that's
the
true.
1900s, it was printed in a bad way. And as a photographer, you were taught you need to take an image that is recognizable no matter how poorly it gets printed in the end.
Yeah.
You know, this is like the whole art of
You
silhouette,
know,
but also,
it's kind of like
yeah,
nowadays with Instagram or
yeah,
consuming photos on the smartphone.
it
You
is.
need to take photos that stand out on a small screen.
Yeah, it absolutely is. If you think about some of the most iconic photos of all time, like Dorothea Lange's photo of the mother with the baby, or I don't know, I think it's from the battlefield where somebody's getting shot, you know,
Mm.
and also like the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima. They're all photos that really, no matter how small they are or
Yeah,
how
yeah.
poorly you print them, you feel something when you look at them. Or even like Henri Cartier-Bresson's, the photo of the guy jumping over the water, you know. And I think that was used to be also kind of part of the process when you would do 35 millimeter negatives, and the first thing you would see would be your contact sheet where you put your negatives on paper and you have a bunch of little images next to each other
Mm.
on this
Yeah.
sheet of paper. That was like Instagram also, you know, seeing tiny
Totally, yeah.
little thumbnails.
Even
And
smaller
the ones
than
that,
most smartphone screens
yeah,
nowadays. So
yeah, it is.
yeah,
And the ones that stood out to you, those would be the ones you would print based on that
yeah.
first view. So, yeah, I think that contrast and recognizability to images has always played a role and probably
But
always
then
will.
that process seems harder with low contrast monochrome photography because images might
Yeah,
not stand out as much.
yeah, for sure.
Maybe that's why some of those photographers shoot medium format because then they have more to look
Yeah,
at.
you get your contact sheet as like a 4x5,
Yeah.
image on a piece of paper. It's enormous by
Mm.
comparison. Yeah,
I want to talk a bit about your street portraits. I don't know
sure.
when you started, but suddenly you started to do a lot of street portraits and post them on your Instagram.
Yeah,
And I think you started because you bought like a Rolleiflex or some
yeah,
twin lens camera, and then you went on your Vivian Maya journey maybe.
yeah.
Talk to me a bit about what made you start taking portraits and not take your usual wide angle street photography in
Mhm.
Frankfurt.
Basically, 2025, I just set it as a goal for myself to shoot with the Rolleiflex every day, or at least take it with me every day. And that's because, yeah, in December of 24, I got a Rolleiflex. It was like Christmas time. I had some money. I found one on Kleinanzeigen, like went to this, tiny house in the middle of nowhere. And this family gave me an old camera. And I started taking pictures with it. They didn't give it to me. I paid them a lot of money. But like, it was really interesting how it took over my life that year, because me being sort of overly ambitious, I was like, yeah, and I could do an interview with a different Rolleiflex photographer every month and like make a podcast as well and like learn as I go.
Mm.
So I did that. I do a
Oh,
plug
you
for
did
it.
that.
It's called Twin Lens.
Why
Um,
did I not see that?
it was, I think, the most challenging thing of my life that year was finding someone to talk to every month.
Because you need to find someone with a similar camera or with a twin
Yeah, I kind of,
lens.
like reduced it down to like just a twin lens camera,
Mm.
I talked to this guy, Matt Piers, and he told me he always takes like 2 or 3 photos when he does these street portraits where you actually ask the person for permission. I think that's a good tip to not miss maybe the best shot that could have been there, especially like when they're already waiting anyways to go on with their
Yeah.
life. But I won't go into all the stuff I learned. People can listen to the podcast. I think actually turned out really well. There's a lot of great photographers there. Yeah, I took my camera with me basically every day. Sometimes it was a little too much, or I had too much going on. And I shot a lot of film.
I vividly remember your portraits because when you posted them, I was very, very amazed by them because they felt so different from what you have been doing. But they also felt, I liked them way more than the street portraits I used to see online. Maybe it's because of the camera or because it was film, I don't know. But also because you got some portraits where people have a very strong look and doesn't feel forced by you. I mean, you probably
Yeah.
directed people, but sometimes or often the portraits look natural, but they still have a very distinct look, or sometimes eye contact, sometimes not.
Yeah.
But I remember them being low contrast, but you just sent me your photos to show in the video. They are more high contrast than I remember them. It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. We always remember photographs wrong, I think. But like
Yeah.
with the street portraits thing, tying again back to Mark Steinmetz, like 80 to 90% of his work that's actually street portraits. You know, those are people he went up to, he talked to them, he said, "Is this okay?" And somehow got an amazing moment out of it. I don't know how he does it either. It's really hard. It's really, really, really difficult. But I like it. I like talking to strangers. I like meeting random people and having this like 5-minute interaction with them. Like you were saying, like you had this reaction to the photos. Everybody who followed me had a reaction to it. Like people who'd never really gone out of their way to say something nice to me about my photos started coming up to me
That sounds so sad.
at like film meetups. I don't mean it in a mean way, but they would be like, "Wow, you know, I just love these portraits." And then I realized, like, oh, okay, this is like hitting a nerve or like reaching people in a good way. And I kept doing it. I think I kind of burned out a little because it was tough doing it every day, and I needed to take a little break at the beginning of this year. But I was just in Munich for a week, and I got out there again with a Rolleiflex, and it felt really good to talk to strangers again and just have, you know, it's like it really boosts your belief in humanity when a random person is nice to you and helps you make art together. You know, it's great.
Must feel more rewarding taking a nice portrait of someone when you already know that person feels good about it.
Yeah,
you know, with
sure.
street photography where you just take candid photos of people because you don't show them the photo afterwards.
It's cute to send people their photos and get their reactions and be like, "Oh wow, thanks so much," or whatever. I always go back and forth because I sort of tend to miss natural moments as well. I want to get more of them. And so I go that direction, and then I want to have more staged portraits, and I go back that way. So I'm kind of always bobbing and weaving back and forth.
So the reason I invited you to be a guest here in this episode was for sure because I remembered your portraits, and I also want to do some street portraits for this episode because I feel so motivated now, and because of Mark Steinmetz and then remembering your portraits. I like the idea that someone has the photo I took and can do something with it. But
me too.
Do you have any advice for me? I think I know how to approach people to ask for a portrait, and I'm probably going to be like, look, there's this photographer I really admire, like Mark Steinmetz, to give them an idea.
I can give you some tips. I'm a little bit hesitant because the last time somebody asked me, I gave them tips, and she made incredible photographs, and I felt very competitive and jealous.
Okay.
But I'll give her a shot.
One day, so that it's probably not going to be very good.
Her name's Charlotte Burkhardt, and she did this amazing series here. There's like a tram line called The Number 11, and she took portraits of people, of strangers, and I think they turned out great. Shout out. My tips would be, number one, when you go out, ask the first person that you want to ask. They'll probably say no, but just break the bubble straight away. Because if you don't, like every time you don't ask somebody, the weight to ask the next person gets heavier and heavier. So as soon as you can, just burst a bubble and like make yourself look like an idiot, a weirdo. They're going to think you want money or something, you know. Second thing I would give as advice, the word project unlocks every door. The word project is better than every other word you could use. You could say, I am a street photographer. You could say lots of different things. They will think you want money. They will think you're a weirdo. As soon as you say the word project, everybody's like, oh, it's just like a helpless
I can be part of something
student.
Greater than me.
Exactly. Let's help them out, you know? The word project is powerful. It's like a Harry Potter spell. I cannot recommend the word enough. Just say, have it be the first word that comes out of your mouth, project. And then say whatever you want.
Excuse me, project.
Yes, exactly. It's actually not bad, honestly.
Really?
And then I think like Matt Pierce gave me this tip. He said that he just tells people don't smile. He doesn't give them any other like
That's already very hard for some people, right? Because they feel
instructions.
like,
It is
oh,
very hard for some people. But it's fascinating how the minute they stop smiling, like so much more comes out, than you saw before. And I think like a fourth thing, just really small, if they have light eyes, count before you take the picture, especially if you're shooting film. Because people who don't have dark eyes tend to blink more when you click the shutter.
Oh.
And I've had that like so often. I take a street portrait and get it back, and
No.
not even a good eyes closed. It's not like a dreamy eyes closed. It's at like half open, half closed.
Well, I'm going to shoot digital, so I can check and take it again.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I think I'm also not going to look for smiles unless it comes out naturally. Or I also don't want to focus on traditional portraits necessarily. Maybe like Mark Steinmetz, he has some photos where people are not even looking into the camera.
Yeah,
they are looking at their shoes or something. It could be something new. So I also want to tell people, like, I honestly don't even know how I want to photograph. Just kind of want to feel it out. And
I saw there's another guy who does street portraits. I don't remember his name, but he tells people to pose however they want. And like, I think sometimes it's good. A lot of times you get like kind of like goofy stuff. But it's an interesting approach. Yeah.
Well, it will then show a bit more of the personality of a person, but especially
sometimes
when it comes
you don't want that.
Yeah, you don't want that if it's clearly a facade or if it's not themselves.
I go back to again the word project. I want to preach this word more.
All right.
Because I feel like
of this episode.
The thing is, like, a lot of people have to tell little lies when they're out taking photos. But if you say, like, I was shooting at this thing in Munich, it was like Oktoberfest, but it was just like a little festival. And I said, I'm doing a project about these types of festivals. I'm not. Like, obviously I'm not.
Yeah.
But you start, you kind of are as well. You have no idea what will become a project, but it's immediately disarming.
Hey, I'm doing a project about these cool hats on the street taken from the backside and silhouetted.
Exactly. I've told so many people I'm doing a project about people with tattoos. Can I take your picture?
Well, that sounds like a very easy one, or one that people would be like totally fine because they're not always showing the face then.
Well, a lot of times I am because I like the people with like tons of face tattoos as well.
Okay, but that's good advice. I wanted to mention this whole Monochrome report and project anyways, but yeah, I'm going to focus on saying like, hey, I have a project. Do you want to be part of it?
When you say that right now,
do you want to feel important?
Every instinct inside of me is like, yeah, sure, I'll help you.
Yeah. I don't want to make this conversation too long, but there's a bit of a trend of doing street portraits and documenting the whole process. Yeah. And I thought about doing that as well, like strapping on a GoPro. But then I thought, why do I want to ruin this for me? Because I'm going to make it harder. People will feel more uncomfortable. I have to do more explaining once I start recording a video. And it's not about the conversation I have with people. And I like the idea that you have these photos, like you have these portraits, and only you know the story behind it, right? If I show the whole process, maybe how awkward the situation was or how funny, then I make it my content, and then I'm using something that feels like it should be just for me and the person.
I understand what you're saying. I think there's good and bad ways of doing it, but ultimately I'm happy anybody does it because it helps me out a lot. Because people like understand the concept better now that people actually go out and do that. 99% of the people I ask, they like start to look at my shoulders to see if there's a GoPro on them.
In Amsterdam, I was asked like, "Are you one of those TikTok? I saw TikTok street photography, and they expected me to take portraits."
Yeah,
like, no,
I get asked all the time.
Of street photographer.
All the time. Yeah. And I'm fine with it. It helps. It's easy. It's good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks, man. That was definitely nice hearing your side, and I'm sure this was valuable to some of the viewers. And
hope so.
I will leave some links below. where people can check you out and the podcast I have missed.
Yeah, you
I have
should.
to listen to that one. And yeah, talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, we are back to discuss the photos I have taken in June. And as I already mentioned in the very beginning of this report, I did not do the street portrait challenge. Shame on me, but I only had one day. And it would be easy to blame this on not having a lot of time, because I only had one day. But also it was a very hot day in summer, and I don't want to make excuses, but I think I have to be in the mindset for it. And I still want to do it. So I'm going to do it in July. But yeah, I have some photos here in Miro, as always, that I want to review. This time I'm just going to be very brief when discussing the images, because let's be honest, there isn't much to discuss this time. By the way, if you want to support this unsponsored series, because I'm not making any money with this series, I'm actually losing subscribers and views and potential future sponsorships. I have a Patreon account where I share behind the scenes. I often share uncut interviews as well, such as the one that I did for this video. So if you want to see an extended version of the James Reed conversation, that's also on Patreon. Sometimes I share edits, sometimes I share my thoughts and ramble on things that I don't want to ramble publicly. So yeah, I just wanted to give myself a shout out. If you want to support this channel, this is one way to do it. Let's go and look at the images. Okay, zooming in to June, beginning of June. My daughter was born. Yeah, that was definitely the main event of June. Nothing else compares, obviously. And I took way more photos than you're about to see here. But because they are too personal, I don't want to share too much of my personal life online. So these are some selected photos that still give you an idea of how it was like. So here's a shot from the hospital at night. This was inside a patient room. There was a huge print of this baby, and I just took a photo of me in the reflection. We also had to wait a lot, and my wife here was still fit. So she was stretching. Documented the interior of the hospital a lot. Here we are taking a tea break because my mother-in-law is also visiting us to help us out. There was a lot of waiting involved before the delivery really happened. And here, for example, this was the night of the delivery or the morning. You can see the sun is already coming out. Yeah, we had a sleepless night. Or I slept for 2 hours. My wife didn't sleep at all. So from like 1 a.m. in the morning till 8 a.m. This is how long it took until it really started. And then we were able to check out of the delivery room around 2 p.m. So it was a long session. I like this photo here because you can see my wife here, and then you can also see me in the reflection of the first sunlight of the day. You can also see the time. It is 5 a.m. in the morning. So I wanted to include that because it adds information. And then our daughter popped out. Here's a little detail shot of her hair. And then this one is a selfie I took with my GR for Monochrome. I like how it is framed. I'm kind of surprised how well I framed this without even looking at the screen. In terms of the cameras I used to document the delivery, I used, of course, my GR for Monochrome, but I also used the Nikon ZF with the 40mm 1.2 Voigtländer lens. Vogtländer, sorry for you Germans who always try to correct me. And that's a super dreamy lens that is just perfect for these emotional, intimate photos. Here's a moment outside of the hospital. There was a rainbow, which is very difficult to photograph in monochrome, but you can do it. I probably used the red filter here. But yeah, a little sign from the heavens, a little rainbow after the birth. Back home, I have a lot of photos like these. This one I think is cool, but there is way more than this, of course. Here's a random shot after a very stormy night. This is a street I often drive along, and all of the trees on the right side, or most of the trees on the right side, fell down because of the storm, of the heavy wind we had that night. And it was kind of crazy seeing all these trees positioned like that. And I just had to take a photo here. Included myself, because that's what you do as a photographer. Sometimes you want to be in the photo as well. Oh yeah, and then even though I had not enough time to take photos, the photos I wanted to take, I did sometimes go out to skate. For example, I have this new morning routine that I'm establishing whenever I bring my son to kindergarten, like once or twice a week, I want to go to this skate park that I discovered that is very close to where I live and just skate for an hour, just for my own enjoyment and because I want to get back into skating. I used to skate a lot, but couldn't because of an injury. I still can't really, but it is a lot of fun getting back to it. And the main thing why I'm doing is also mentally. It gives me a dopamine hit that is a better dopamine hit than me scrolling, Instagram or YouTube. At least I'm active again and it's nice being out and it's nice feeling the board. I'm progressing also. And then one day I took a camera with me and I took these self-portraits here. It's mostly just for me as a memory. Like, look, back when I was almost 40 years old, I started to skate again. And then I took a few photos of a friend of mine, mostly as a warm-up for the street portraits I want to take. We were actually out here in a small town for the sake of doing some street portraits. But we only had like 1.5 hours. Every time he would be like, what about this person? This guy looks interesting. I kept seeing these cliche photos of people, these portraits that I don't want to see and don't want to take. So it was really hard for me to motivate myself to actually approach someone for a portrait because I feel like I need to really see something in a person. And I had a very hard time seeing something in people. But he kept seeing people and saying, and what about this guy? What about this guy? Come on, we can ask this person. And I would always be like, no, I don't know. This looks kind of boring. And I already know what kind of photo I will get out of it. I know it's not healthy. And I was probably running away from the challenge. But the best I could do on this day was take photos of my friend for practice. I also was using a setup that I'm not too familiar with. I was using the Hasselblad X2D with a 75 Leipoch lens, so an adapted M-mount lens. And it works great because it gives you this very shallow depth of field and more of a medium format look than using native lenses for this system. But the downside is that you can then only use the electronic shutter, which has a very bad rolling shutter, slow readout speed, which is not great for fast-moving subjects, of course, but for portraiture, slowing down is not necessarily a bad thing. It makes me kind of feel like I have a slow, expensive film camera, which was the goal. I wanted to create a digital version of what James Reed was using or is using. So yeah, these are test shots and let's see what kind of portraits I will show you next time. I don't want to make the next episode an entire street portrait episode because I still want to take some photos of other things, but a portion will be dedicated to street portraiture and I'm very curious to see what I will come up with when I have the guts to finally ask strangers for a portrait, which should be easy, but somehow I'm out of practice. You really need to practice photography and I haven't done this in a long time, like asking people for a portrait. So it takes a lot of mental preparation for me. And that's already it. These are all the photos from June, or some of them. Yeah, a very personal month for me, with a lot of memories that are for me and not for the public. But at least I got a few photos. So let's look at my takeaways. Not a long list this time, but let's get into it. So neutral contrast or realistic contrast. This is something that James and I were discussing where we are talking about the right amount of contrast for a scene or photograph to feel realistic. Or maybe another way to talk about this is contrast that is not getting in the way of the scene, meaning that the contrast is not too extreme so that it starts to become more of an aesthetic experience, but also not too flat and low contrast so that the image is lacking some punch. Print or screen size influences contrast choice. Yeah, as we were discussing, selecting photos based on a contact sheet or negative strip. And in today's age, the equivalence would be looking at photos on Instagram or on a computer screen, seeing all the thumbnails. Of course, if you shoot high contrast, it will be easier to see geometry, shapes. So it's going to make it easier then to see if an image works or not. But with low contrast, it gets harder. And I feel like you need a bigger screen or a bigger print to really appreciate a low contrast monochrome photograph because the details in the frame are not easily communicated to you. You have to really look at a photograph. And that makes me think that some people choose medium format, low contrast monochrome film for landscapes or architecture because you have a bigger negative and it lends itself better towards bigger prints. Not saying that you cannot print big with high contrast images, but High contrast works also very well small. I don't know what this means for me exactly because I have 2 big monitors that I can work with. So for previewing my photos, I have big screens, so I can shoot low contrast monochrome and it's not difficult for me to see all the details. But showing them online on Instagram, on my website, I think I'm going to choose photos that work on Instagram better and photos that work better on my website. Not that I prioritize Instagram over my website, but I know that on my website at least people can enlarge my photos and look at them full screen. On Instagram you can't do that, so I might not even post on Instagram. That's how I do it nowadays. I don't even post. I mostly post stories, and on my website I post bigger photos or just hold them back until I eventually print them, which I think is what I eventually want to do more of instead of posting online. Okay, high or low contrast is not always a stylistic choice. That is another objective observation. It's not really something that comes out of my own experience because I have all the tools available. I have Silver FX to edit my photos in any black and white film style I want. Although nowadays I prefer my black and white photos to be clean, so I don't even use any film emulations or grain emulations, simulations. And I like what James was pointing out, that medium format film, black and white film, has less grain, of course, than 35mm film. So there's more of a timeless quality with cleaner black and white photographs on film than with very grainy 35mm film. So for my digital photography, I also wanted to look more like medium format black and white film, which is easier to emulate because there's less grain. But it was interesting thinking about the economical aspect as well, that the Western photographers probably had access to better printing techniques, more film choices probably as well, I don't know, and how other photographers who don't have the same access chose higher contrast printing techniques or simpler printing methods that resulted in high contrast prints, that also played a role in influencing a certain style based on a region, which I thought was very interesting. But nowadays we have all the tools available to choose whatever style we like and just go for it, which is a luxury, something that we need to appreciate, that we can just choose a visual style and then stick with it if we like it or change it. So that's something that I now understand better and can appreciate more. Okay, so that was my June monochrome report. I see you back end of July, no, probably beginning of August. And expect a few more vlogs and behind the scenes videos as well, because I already filmed some cool stuff. Hopefully some cool street portraits, hopefully some summer vibes as well. So yeah, see you soon. Enjoy your summer holidays if you are on vacation right now. And thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you who are still tuning in into this show. And I see you soon. Bye. Ciao.